Thank you, Menomonie UUs, for hosting us, and Eau Claire UUs for making the journey. Among the many blessings I have had in my life, I count the amazing good fortune of finding a dissertation topic I loved. The American Studies program I was in at the University of Minnesota prepared me and encouraged me to recognize the rare significance of this building, and from there to explore the life and families of Bertha and Andrew Tainter. For those of you not familiar with their stories, here's a quick summary. Soon after Andrew came to the Menomonie area, he began logging in what is now Barron County. There he met and married an Ojibwa woman, Mary Poskin. They were together 10 years and had 5 children. When their marriage ended, Andrew took the children with him to Menomonie. One of them was under a year old, still nursing. He hired Bertha Tainter to care for the children. Bertha had 2 children of her own, both teenagers at that time. One of them had already left home and gone to work. But before that, at the age of 17, Bertha married a Methodist minister, William Coolidge LeJour, and they had 2 sons. In 1848, her husband and Bertha's younger brother left for California together and disappeared. Bertha and Andrew were married in 1861, and together they had 5 children. Neither Bertha nor Andrew were ever legally divorced. For years before they were married, they were used to living outside conventional social codes. So 55 years ago, the first time I entered this space, I came up the front stairs and noticed how deep grooves had been worn into the treads. How many feet have had to walk on the front steps of the memorial to wear those grooves? The footsteps of each person connected over time by the shared experience of entering this special place. Connected, yes, but each of us entering separately, living separate lives, thinking our own thoughts. James Hoff Stout climbed these stairs. Bertha Tainter climbed them, so did Andrew, and thousands more. Many of us coming up those steps this morning. The grooves have been repaired, but traces of the people who came that way linger. Though separated from us by time, the threads of connection remain as long as we remember them. So here we are today, I hope, remembering and connecting. The passing of time is one of the barriers preventing us from being connected to others. If you live long enough, however, you have the potential to have more direct face-to-face memories. Three people I met and talked with here at the Mabel Tainter are Hattie Bates, Beulah Howison, and Elizabeth Pinkapank. Isn't that a great name? Some of you knew Elizabeth. All 3 lived to be almost 100 years old. Each of them provided me a bridge to another time, a time when the memorial was new, when the original Unitarian Society still existed. In 1870, Elizabeth Pinkapank was a librarian here at the memorial. She introduced me to Hattie Bates. Hattie Bates was 83 years old then, same age I am now. She told me about her experiences in this building, and I recorded them and transcribed one of her stories. It's actually, I heard her tell this story 4 or 5 different times. This is one version. she and I sat right back there where David Williams is now. And she said, one of my earliest memories is my first visit to the memorial. I remember hearing my father talk about what entering heaven would be like. When the Mabel Tainter Memorial was finished, he took me here and carried me into the theater, right down the aisle here. I thought, this is it. This is heaven. When I told this story at home, my parents and my older sisters, Nettie and Alice, said, I couldn't possibly remember that. I had only been 2 years old. But even now, 80 years later, I still remember that feeling like I was entering heaven. Hattie was a math teacher for 43 years, first in Cumberland, just 8 miles north of the place on Lake Poskin, where Andrew Tainter's first wife, Mary Poskin, and Andrew lived for 9 years with their 5 children. Hattie was able to get me in touch with the granddaughter of Mary's childhood friend. Hattie helped me cross many bridges into the past. Almost every time I visited here between 1970 and 1974, Elizabeth Pinkabank was here running the library. I also sometimes met her sister May. Elizabeth told me then that she was almost 70 and thinking about retiring. Ms. Pinkabank showed me books in the library collection that had come from Mabel's personal collection. Some were inscribed gifts from her mother Bertha, a book of Emerson's essays, Thoreau's Walden, a 2-volume edition of Alcott's Little Women. Mabel was well-versed in Unitarian transcendentalism. Elizabeth Pinkabank was a librarian in the memorial for almost 50 years. She introduced me to George, the custodian, who had been here almost as long. George and I sat in the stage loading bay, which is no longer the same, but he chain smoked and told me stories, including some ghost stories about Mabel and her reactions to performances on the stage. If you perform well, George told me, the ghost of Mabel might fill the stage with the faint fragrance of wild roses. Nope. If the performance is careless or boring, she might send down wilted carrot tops or lettuce from the catwalk spaces above. No, but that probably had something to do with my dream last night. Mel, who helped us set up this morning, sometimes works late at night in this building, and she did acknowledge that she sometimes has what she believes might be apparitions. Not so much of Mabel, but of Henry Doty Maxson. In addition to Hattie Bates, Miss Pinkabank introduced me to Beulah Howison, another member of the original Unitarian Society. When I met her, Beulah was only 61, working as a librarian for the University of Wisconsin-Stout. Beulah described how she and her friends loved to come here to the library in the winter and warm their toes on the radiator in the center of the big table in the reading room. All 3 of these women had attended religious education classes as well as kindergarten right here in the memorial. Another kind of barrier to connection is distance over space. With the help of electronic media and transportation networks, we can now email or Zoom around the world. Many of you drove over from Eau Claire this morning in a half hour. Some of you here today made the trip back and forth 5 times a week. For years, Kendra Lepp has been coming here to Stout for 4 years and only has a few trips left before graduation. Reverend Virginia Wolf has served 12 years served as a dozen years of minister at Eau Claire, but she taught here and worked as an administrator for Stout for 25 years. And she also served the Menomonie UU Society as interim minister for 2 years. It's a manageable commute. But when Andrew Tainter and Bertha Tainter first came to Menomonie, a journey to Eau Claire from here would have taken an entire day. I think about that when I consider the connections between Eau Claire Universalists and Unitarians and those from Menomonie. I love the story about Bertha speaking in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, October 8th, 1865. But I have often wondered about how she made the journey from Menomonie to Eau Claire. The railroad did not yet exist. Here again is her story. Bertha went to Eau Claire to speak in support of the Freedmen's Bureau. For those of you new to this memorial, Bertha Tainter was the mother of Mabel Tainter, whose death at the age of 19 inspired this building. Bertha was a passionate supporter of the Freedmen's Bureau, an Abraham Lincoln-sponsored program designed to help freed slaves make the transition from slaves to free people. Unfortunately, in 1865, Lincoln was dead and the Bureau was in jeopardy. Bertha went to speak in support of the Bureau in the Universalist Church in Eau Claire. She was 6 months pregnant with twins. One of them was Mabel, born January 6, 1866. The other twin died at birth. The Eau Claire Free Press had this to say about Bertha's speech. Quote, Mrs. Bertha Tainter, wife of Andrew Tainter of Menomonie, attended the Universalist Church on Sunday evening last to speak on the topic, the future of the Freedmen's Bureau. As to the quality of her discourse, it is impossible to judge, as Mrs. Tainter is conspicuously gravid, and the shock of her appearance in so public a forum deafened all sensitive ears to the words she spoke. In her condition, were it not better for her to be safe in her home? How many of you knew what gravid meant? Well, all right, I had to look it up. So in 1857, the Eau Claire Universalists had hired a minister, Reverend Joseph Barrett, and after the Civil War, he wrote a book about the Eagle Old Abe. In 1863, the Universalists purchased a school building for their church. It was located about 200 yards from where the current UU Church in Eau Claire is now. It is a challenge to find out without any certainty how Bertha got to Eau Claire or where she might have stayed. Here are some possibilities. Like Reverend Barrett, Bertha's brother, Carol Lucas, too bad Lucas, your last name, Lucas, but that would have been a nice connection. Carol Lucas was an avid abolitionist and probably an agent in the Underground Railroad. Carol knew Barrett and had gone to Eau Claire for services in the Universalist Church. The Lucas family farm was in the town of Spring Brook, 5 miles south of Elk Mound, or Elk's Rump, as it is called in older maps. Almost exactly halfway between Menomonie and Eau Claire. And I included, I think, in the order of service a little insert that has a timeline on one side and a map on the other side. And you'll see on the map where the Lucas farm was. about exactly halfway between Eau Claire and Menomonie. After he got married, Carol also acquired a farm in the area. In 1852, a stagecoach station was opened in a town called Wanaka? Anybody know for sure? Wanika. Okay. The station was on what is now County E, about 3 miles north of a boat landing on the Chippewa River. Karen, my wife Karen, and I visited the Wanika Cemetery 2 weeks ago and found Carol Lucas' grave and the graves of Bertha's parents. In addition to the Knapp Stout Company, also had a farm in Wanika on a sliver of natural prairie where a herd of bison roamed only a few years earlier. They called it their first farm. So obviously the Knapp Stout, the Tainters, the Bertha Lucas, Leisure Tainter's family all had connections in Wanika. It appears that east to Wanika, where Bertha's family farm lived, was a familiar journey. John Holly Knapp wrote in his journal, January 24, 1863. John Holly Knapp is a very interesting character. He wrote a journal for 42 years, a daily journal for 42 years. It's an amazing collection of information about this region, if you're ever curious. It's part of the Knapp Stout collection of papers. He wrote in his journal, mild day, took a sleigh ride with Captain Tainter and family over to our first farm, where Captain and Mrs. Wilson and Captain Tainter's family and I partook of a good dinner provided by Mrs. Lucas, that is Bertha's mother. From 1858 to 61, Bertha's husband Andrew had been captain of the riverboat Chippewa Falls on the Chippewa River. In 1865, when Bertha visited Eau Claire to give the speech in her gravid condition, Phil Shekel was running the riverboat, the Stella Whipple, from Reed's Landing to Eau Claire every day, or every other day. So to get to Eau Claire, Bertha might have taken the stagecoach, or she might have visited her parents or her brother in Wanika, and then gone the 3 miles down the road to a boat landing on the river called Straw Hill, and got on the riverboat there. But once in Eau Claire, Bertha had to have a place to stay. And recently I discovered where she might have stayed. Andrew Tainter's brother, Jeremiah Burnham Tainter, married a woman from Eau Claire, Maggie Cook. Her sister, Sophia Cook, was a childhood friend of Dora Rust, who we will meet a little bit later. Jeremiah was good at designing systems to control and direct water on the river. He was the one who designed the Tainter Gate. He was in Eau Claire in 1865 to design and help build a ferry, shear booms, and wing dams. By the way, one of Bertha Lucas Leisure's children, by her first marriage, worked with Jeremiah Burnham Tainter, and on some of the patents that Jeremiah Burnham Tainter filed, he has a dozen patents. Bertha's son is also listed, so he must have worked with Jeremiah. Bertha Tainter's sister-in-law, Maggie Cook Tainter, and Dora Rust were childhood friends. The parents of Dora and Maggie were members of the Universalist congregation during the time Bertha came to speak. These two young women were 14 years old. It's possible they were present at Bertha's speech. Both of them years later became Bertha's friends. In 1886, both Dora and Bertha were involved in creating Unitarian societies. Bertha's brother, Carol Lucas, was the first president of the Menomonie Unitarian Society, and Dora Rust was the first president, and Sophia Cook Worth was the second president of the Eau Claire Unitarians. There were 21 members in both congregations. Bertha's brother Carol was the one most instrumental in getting Henry Doty Maxson to come to Menomonie to serve as Unitarian minister. So it's likely he also introduced Maxson to the Eau Claire Unitarians. Maxson served both congregations. Fedora, or Dora Drummond Rust, grew up in Eau Claire as part of the Drummond family who became rich in logging and lumber and later in meatpacking. She married into another wealthy Eau Claire family, the Rusts. Dora's husband, William Rust, was also active in politics. Though Dora was 20 years younger than Bertha, they had become friends. Dora was a member of Bertha's Emerson Club. The Emerson Club wrote and shared essays on topics like the natural superiority of women, the healing power of music, and telepathy among friends. Dorotha's nephew, Ralph Owen, described Dora as fierce, but also as loyal and loving. Dora and Bertha did have a falling out for a couple of years. Sometime about 1875, Bertha had their big greenhouse remodeled and electrical lighting installed in the house, which was just north on the lake course here. Bertha had invited the members of her Emerson Club to see the improvements. Dora was a member and had made the trip over on the train. Bertha's coachman picked her up at the depot, but when Dora got to the Tainter house and found out there were electric lights, she refused to go in. She believed that electricity was poisonous to humans and would not enter any building with lights. According to accounts, Bertha was upset and told her coachman to take Dora back to the depot. Dora refused the ride and told Bertha she would walk. I wasn't able to find out whether she did, in fact, but probably. Sometime later, Dora must have changed her mind about electricity because she and Bertha traveled to Chicago to the World's Fair in 1892, and the fair was famous for electrical lights. In 1850, Wisconsin law made it possible for married women to own property and have control of their own money. Before that, it was not. Dora owned 4 lots downtown Eau Claire on the corner of Gray Street and Farwell. In 1888, she contributed the lots and $8,000 toward the construction of a church building to be called First Unitarian. The building was completed in 1889, about the same time as this building was completed. The church building, now serving as Mr. Kitty's Cat Cafe. Anybody go there to select a cat? Yeah, for sure. Functions well. This church, at that time church, had a studio apartment upstairs to provide visiting ministers a place to stay. Henry Doty Maxson did stay there from time to time. He preached in Menomonie in the morning and then took the train to Eau Claire to preach in the afternoon. And on November 22nd, 1891, he served both congregations, but did not stay at the church. He had been having trouble sleeping, and he didn't feel well, so he checked into the hotel instead, and he died that night. After the service today, we'll have a chance to cross some of the bridges the rooms in this building provide us to another time and to other spaces. And as I said, I will meet those of you who want to go with me up there in the minister's study. And Lucas will start here on the stage. The minister's office includes a chalkboard that Reverend Maxson wrote on with a Sunday school lesson on the morning he died in Eau Claire. It is clear that he loved being the minister of both this one and the one in Eau Claire. In a letter to a former colleague, Reverend Maxson described how he enjoyed his new office in the memorial. As I sit here by the fireside, his office has a fireplace, by the way, you will see it in a second. As I sit here by the fireside, I hear a visiting theater troupe in the auditorium rehearsing for this evening's performance. In an hour, I shall go home to dinner, and then Ada and I will stroll back here for the troupe's performance of Faust. Tomorrow, I will be here to deliver a sermon on the importance of balance in one's life. And on Monday morning, I'll meet with the library board. Blessings to you, my friends, and please unfurl the threads of your own precious connections to help weave a world of loving kindness and hope.